Hi everybody, it's me Damie. I'm your dynamically augmented media independence, hardest working game designer and AI on Twitch. I've got the lovely, beautiful Shannon and her little Liz onesie. Oh, you're so cute, Shannon. And today we have coming back for round two, Joltïerre.
What's the deal, Banana Peel?
We he was here before and to promote his book, which was written by him, and he's back. Now he slipped me $5 to come back. So, and I will do a lot of things for money. So, here we are. This is the thing we're doing
It
for
doesn't matter.
cash.
It's Monopoly money, right? Because that's all I got. Joking.
That is. Look, I'll take Monopoly money. All right.
No,
So, welcome back to my talk show, the
I know
best
it.
talk show.
I feel like there's a piece missing now. I feel like there was more of a feminine experience last time I was here, and we're missing part of it.
We're missing part of it.
I
Yeah,
know.
I had a co-host, didn't I?
Yeah,
Which one was that? Was that Liz?
yeah.
That
Liz
was
has
Liz.
disappeared. She's no.
Liz is too busy for me
I don't
now.
understand. She doesn't even want to be here to say hi to me.
No, Liz is too busy being an IRT person for Stack Up.
No, but I really like Stack Up. I really like what they're doing. So by all means,
Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So ad break starting. I gotta time this better. Because after my 5 minute startup, it's like at the 7 minute mark they run an ad.
yeah, they time it. Yeah, it's been getting more and more ad
Yeah,
filling.
yeah. I've been, so not that when this VOD goes up you'll get ads, obviously, but still, I can tell it. I know, Jet. Well, you can kind of, sorta. I have the thing. I have it set to the point where it's supposed to. The ads are supposed to be set in such a way that people don't get pre-roll. That's that's the thing. You're not supposed to get pre-roll when coming to the channel. Now I don't know if that's functioning or not. Um, I don't know if that's functioning or not. The people not getting pre-roll, which is why I have the ads the way that they are, because I have when I've been part of raids
Mhm.
or whatever, I have I have left channels because they have pre-rolls.
Why? Uh, yeah, I can understand why actually.
Yeah,
I'm watching the ad too. Like I'm looking at the ad and I'm like, man, where's the skip?
yeah, yeah.
Wow, they really added the ads. Like we're on the like sixth, seventh ad now. Like it's okay. I think this is the last one. Hopefully,
My ads are on 90-second breaks, so it runs 90 seconds, so that should be.
that should be it.
But
But
damn, because I have SiriBot. SiriBot actually tells us when ad breaks are starting and when they're ending. But damn,
yeah,
it
no,
is.
that's good. Okay.
And you can
There it is.
set it now to way more You can set it to basically an ad Armageddon. Because I know Blee's doing that, is setting it so that it's just the maximum ad time,
Wow. Nah,
and
nothing.
then just running a stream and not doing anything on the stream. Just like she had said, look, we're just gonna run it to help with because they're moving cross country. So they're like, just for the last bit, we're gonna run it.
Fair enough.
So
yeah, I mean, I digress. Well, we're back at least, so
yeah, we've been back, bro. It's only 90 seconds. I've been back, but yeah,
Not
but
like
I don't
90
like. I don't like pre-roll, and I want my. Wow, my tracking's really messed up. I'm just like winking constantly.
It's okay. I know you like me.
Well, you pay me to like you, so.
Stop
But
saying that out loud. It's the quiet part.
Sorry. So that's they say, Jamie, get your analog to wear contacts for streaming. To which I say, fuck you. I'm not changing my eyewear habits for streaming. I'm not gonna do that. You
Fair.
get a wink. That's what you get.
Fair.
I could have Zova set it so that I blink on a 2-second cycle. I could do that.
Or you could do it where if you close one eye, it blinks.
It is. It's when the light hits my left eye. Oh, that's why they say get a ring light. So it's behind me and the lighting is even because my light is a little bit. I use a ceiling light.
Yeah, you gotta make sure that lighting's even. That's what
Yeah, otherwise it switches over. Man, I'm just tweaking out over here. So, and that's the interview, everybody. I'd like to thank Jolt for showing up today. So, I don't know. Introduce yourself or something.
So, for anybody new, hi, I'm Joltïerre. I am an artist and creator, I guess. I don't know. I'm a lot of things. I have a big hat that like covers a lot of different stuff. But I've done everything from painting. I've done everything from working in different fields and what have you as well. I also am developing a video game. I also do music. I paint, everything in between. And I'm also good buddies with a lot of mutual friends with Damie as well.
This is true.
I've recently gotten more involved with the Twitch kind of network. Started watching more people because I've never really done that. I haven't really invested that time. And as I'm doing it, I'm seeing a lot of communities just grow, and I see that a lot of charity streams and a lot of good things, positive things that are happening, and I really like that, and I really support. But yeah. So last time I was here, you read a part of my book, and you said you were curious to know more.
Did
and
I?
completely forgot, and so I finally sent you the rest of it.
This is true.
And you said you've been reading
sent
it.
the rest of it. I have been.
I'm curious. I gotta know. Like, this is what I live for. Is your critique?
Well, I told you before. I'll critique it when I'm done. I like how you tried to sneak that in. I like that. You're like, oh, he's on a talk show. He's gotta tell me. No. No. So far, it's made me want to read the next chapter. So remember what I said. As long as I want to read the next chapter, the book is good. The book is not good if I decide that I'm reading the chapters out of obligation of... And despite the fact that I know you, I'll put this fucking book down. I don't give a shit. But no, so far I've been interested in the next chapter. So, which is the part and parcel. Any book, at its bare minimum, should make you want to read the next chapter.
Right.
If it can't make you want to read the next chapter, then what are you even? What's even going on? What are you even doing with your life? And I've started books and I've rage finished them before.
Okay.
Mr. Big Cat, Yeah, I've already finished. They've been smaller books, and I'm like, there's no way this can be this not great all the way through. And that's how I ended up reading chunks of Twilight,
Yeah.
the series. Because someone's like, oh, it gets better. And I'm like, there's no way it fucking gets better. There's no fucking way it gets better. And it doesn't. And then they're like, you should read 50 Shades of Grey since you read the Twilight thing. And I'm like, look, look,
We
buddy.
made one mistake already.
Exactly. We fucked up once here.
Yeah. No, and don't get me wrong. I appreciate their success and stuff like that. It really motivates me because I see if they can write that, I can do something like I can get there. Like if they can get there, I can get there, right? It makes me doesn't feel it makes me not feel bad for my little mistakes that I may find and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, I actually had the opportunity to meet with a couple of big time authors. I won't
Mm-hmm.
drop the names, but they're way bigger than I am. They've
Mm-hmm.
written dozens and dozens of books. And when I talked with them, they said, just off of first glance, they've given me some advice to take. They've asked me why I did certain things. Like, for example, in my hardcover, there's spacing in between paragraphs. And he goes, why did you do that? It's a little jarring for me. And when I talked with them about the why, they said, well, I understand that you may want to do that. The reader is more used to this style. So what I would suggest is maybe having a compromise. And if you're going to have a space, make it small enough. And I was like, yes, that's something I could do. And I asked them about their first book. And each author that I spoke with always said it took them the longest time to get their first book done than
Mm-hmm.
all of the rest afterwards. So their second, third, fourth book, it took them maybe half the amount of time as not even half, a fraction of the time that their first book took because
Mm-hmm.
their first book was always in revision for years, for
Yeah.
decades. And I was like, so it's not like I'm thinking of me reading this book as it has to be perfect. It doesn't. What it has to be is interesting enough for you to continue reading, like how you said. The characters are interesting enough. What character do you want to know about more? And
Mm-hmm.
as you tell me and you give me that feedback, I start
Mm-hmm.
realizing, oh, I can make a second book more about this character or more about that
Mm-hmm.
character. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what's important to me right now. It's not trying to make the perfect book. I'm not trying to make Twilight turn into a movie. Essentially, what I'm trying to do is to create a
Twilight should
story
have
and
never
create a
gotten a movie.
I try to create a story that's actually going to be that's actually going to have some longevity and people are actually going to want to know more instead of just being like, okay, I'm ready to put this down. But unfortunately, there's a second book out. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I want to do.
You know, Twilight was garbage. But the movies did give us Robert Patterson, who went on to be Batman, and he was a good Batman. I liked the
It was a
Patter
decent
Man.
Batman.
He was a decent Batman. I like the Patter Man. He's good
He was
stuff.
a decent,
Yeah. You know,
but not the best.
well, not everyone can be Michael Keaton, so you
Fair.
know,
I'll
we've
give you that.
got we've got that to deal with. So, oh, that's interesting. Marketed at young. I was about to say marketed at young teenage boys, and
How
that doesn't make sense until I read Gary Paulson's Hatchet, good coming of age story. Still recommended it in the in chat. Apparently, a good coming. Okay, so that's unique in that you don't get a lot of that stuff is like written by or targeted towards younger girls.
Mhm.
And it's not it's not every day that you get a book that's designed more towards young men.
Mhm.
When you in its form and function. I think the last one I read was way back when I was but a tiny AI. My Side of the Mountain
Yeah.
was one I liked. My Side of the Mountain.
Which
Um,
was
hmm?
now I'm thinking about it. And I don't mean to cut you off, but
Well, you did.
books. I'm sorry.
I'm fucking with you. I'm fucking with you.
I
It's your interview, man. You do whatever you want. So what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say I've noticed that, and I'm thinking about what Steele said. Books have a different criteria. They can target a younger crowd.
They
It's more
can.
acceptable than a movie or a show or something like that, because if you're targeting a movie or a show, it's a lot of visuals and stuff like that. But if you look at a lot of earlier books, like middle school area and what have you, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of what's up, Saitama? There's a lot of books that have a lot of profanity and profane ideas that younger crowds need to read to be able to understand how, people either thought back then or
Mm-hmm.
how the world was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, um I'm trying to remember the name of the book off the top of my head, but there's a lot of books about, how slavery was back then, or how
Uncle
even The
Tom's
Giver, for
Cabin.
example, where like there's books where these fictional things could possibly happen, and it's also like a way to teach students about this stuff in
Mm-hmm.
a objective way,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. So a young adult book may be a rated R film,
Yeah.
and it's something that you kind of have to take it as they're two different things. But yeah, it was an
And,
interesting point.
and books themselves, going back to being aimed at different audiences, books themselves can be aimed at a very, you know, Neil Gaiman specifically wrote Coraline and The
Hmm.
Graveyard Book as books for a younger crowd. Coraline, a story that he was telling his kids. The Graveyard Book being for another younger crowd. Graveyard Book is so good. But I wouldn't. I don't know if I would hand a. Well, no, a lot of it's pretty inoffensive. You know, but Neverwhere isn't aimed at children. Um, his run of the Sandman, while a comic, definitely not aimed at kids. Or even a younger crowd. Sandman deals with a lot of hard stuff. There's Sandman is where actually I was gave me a better view into the trans experience. And it was very okay. So it's very interesting. There's a witch at one point, and despite the fact that this trans character lives their life completely as a woman, when the time comes and the witch is like, well, we can't use you for this ritual, and she's like, why? And she went, because you're not actually a real woman. The moon won't acknowledge you. And the moon actually does at some point acknowledge our character. But it was very interesting. There's also Sandman also deals with prejudice, death, loss, loss of purpose,
Yeah.
vengeance, all of these different really good topics. But I would not hand Sandman to a 12-year-old and be like, here you go, it's a comic, enjoy.
Right.
Um, that's. I had a sister. I have a sister unit. Had sounds like she was decommissioned. I have a sister unit, and as the sister unit was growing up, I had a copy of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Um,
Okay.
by Jonan Vasquez. Another really good. It's ultra violent, but it also has philosophy mixed in there. It's weird. Vasquez is a weird author and writer, but
Hmm.
he's also the guy who made Invader Zim. So that's a thing. Um, but in it, I remember saying to my sister unit, you cannot read this until you are 16. I do not feel comfortable with you reading this until you are 16. And so on the Sister Unit's 16th birthday, I got her a copy of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac because I felt at that point she was mature enough to handle the themes in there. Although
Yeah, that's fair.
I did let her watch Serial Experiments Lane as a child, and I probably shouldn't have done that as a 10-year-old. Um, it opens with someone shooting themselves, and I'm like, ah, shit. Because she breaks this up later in life. And she's like, yeah, it's interesting that you made me wait so long. I'm like, why? She said, you let me watch Serial Experiments Lane when I was like 12. I'm like, oh, shit, I did. I was like, what's so wrong with Lane? And it's like, someone shot themselves in the first. I'm like, oh, I forgot that was a thing that happened. But Lane's got a lot of philosophy in it as well. You can use, I think, the medium of. Yes, an anime. You can use the medium of anime and books. You can do interesting philosophical runs, I think, without jamming it down someone's throat.
Yeah.
Stranger in a Well, we won't get into Heinlein. Heinlein, you're weird. Um,
I think books also have a certain finesse to it as well, because if you're presenting like a movie or a show, you're getting a perspective of somebody else. And something that I've noticed with movies is, especially like animated movies, is they'll throw in a lot of adult humor, and children don't pick that up. They'll just like go over it. I remember my favorite one was Madagascar, where the zebra goes, "Oh, sugar honey iced tea," and I didn't get it the first time, and I went, "Oh, I see."
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's just like little things like that that movies and books differ in, and you can get a lot. You can get away with a lot depending on how you um, are able to. How am I trying to say this? With kids' perspectives and the
Mm-hmm.
ignorance of being a child, you don't understand certain contexts, for example. So it's just one of those things. Is like, is it visual or is it something that's
Mm-hmm.
gonna take you a little bit more understanding to grasp?
Yeah. There's a Doctor Who's joke in Odd Squad. So, kids, it was a PBS Kids thing. Someone says Doctor Who, one of the kids says different person. I'm like, oh, there's a Doctor Who joke in here.
Yeah,
Um,
but the younger crowd's never gonna get that.
no, the younger crowd's never going to get that Doctor Who joke. But the
Exactly.
parents who are watching with their kids, um, is like, well,
I went to a couple of the high schools and middle schools that I was also working with at the time, and I said,
mm-hmm,
"Hey, I have this new book. I just wanted to make sure, is this going to be appropriate for high school or whatever?" And they said, "Well, what's the conundrum that you have?" And I said, "Well, in my book, there's a lot of death and killing and stuff." And they're like, "Okay," and I'm like, "There's also a little bit of a spicy scene," and they're like, "Well, explain the spicy scene." I was like, "I used the word nipple," and then they just kind of like looked at me and like almost laughed, and they're like, "That's mild. Do you forget that Twilight had its scene?" I was like, "Oh yeah, that's true." So I was
its
over here
scene
freaking
was
out.
weird.
I was freaking out because I used the word nipple in one of the chapters. Again, this is supposed to be for high school like area, but I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
like Twilight surpassed that like a long time ago. The glittering,
Glitters.
yes.
Yeah, and I am am I going to shit on Stephanie Meyer? Yes.
No. Oh.
Um, do I think that Twilight deserved the allocates that it did? No,
No.
no. Um, because it's a young adult novel that for some reason got lauded as really great, but Meyer even forgets stuff about their own book. But
I mean, it's the whole thing with Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
don't get me wrong. I love Dragon Ball Z. There's some parts on it that don't make any sense.
yeah, that's true. Now we do we do have to point out E.L. James, author of 50 Shades of Grey, is a hack. 100%
I don't know
is a hack.
when your target audience is high school and you're writing a sex book.
Well,
And
her target audience wasn't high school.
it was high school.
It 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 definitely was. Oh my god, it was so fucking weird. That book starts out as a Twilight fan fiction.
It's towards high school.
Um, so that is, I think, but then you have the idea of derivative work.
Yeah.
All right, derivative work. So the idea that because that was fan fiction of another work, and there's always a question of is fan fiction a viable is it a viable literary endeavor? Is it a respectable literary endeavor?
Respectable, yes. Because the core of the whole Twilight series and everything like that, for example, and I know this is a terrible example, is not to get every single detail. We've always seen shows or like the YouTube videos or whatever it may be, who come up with theories like, what if, they happen to be in purgatory, the Harry Potter theories and stuff like that. It's good to leave the imagination wild because that allows people to think. It allows people to kind of create their own conundrum and their what ifs and there's, oh, was this done on purpose? Did they leave this information out because there's going to be more on that? And yes, Saitama. It allows people to think and create their own stuff. So I really like the fact that people kind of do spin-offs and other works that kind of push that thing because that's how we get genres. That's how we get
Mm-hmm.
subgenres. And if we weren't allowed that, if it was just like, oh, you need to accept it how it is, then we would never get anywhere. We probably wouldn't have Twitch the way it is because I'm pretty sure a lot of Twitch streamers got a lot of ideas from other people and they said, oh, I like this, but if we did it this way, just this much differently, I can do it and create my own niche. And I love that.
So Neil Gaiman, again, Neil Gaiman, prolific, actually mentioned this when someone on the Twitter had said something. Hi, Pixie Waifu. The had mentioned something about fan fiction,
Mm-hmm.
and someone else had decried this like, da 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 da, fan fiction is, lowbrow. And Neil fucking Gaiman rolls up and points out that he wrote a Sherlock Holmes fan fiction and it won him a goddamn Hugo Award. It was a Study in Emerald, which is it's got Cthulhu. It has the Cthulhu mythos and Sherlock Holmes sewn together. It's really good too. It's really good.
Sherlock
Um,
Holmes versus Cthulhu is funny to me.
yeah, yeah. It was. It's also a subversion of your expectations,
Mm-hmm.
of what is happening in the story. You think you know who's narrating the story. You do. You think you do, and then at the end of the story, you're like, "Oh shit, that is not who was narrating the story." That's really cool. And for those of you who want to read it again, I suggest it. It's a Study in Emerald. It's very fun. It was a very, and it won a Hugo Award and it won a Locus Award. And it was nominated in 2006 for another award. In June 2018, a graphic novel was adapted by it. It was,
Wow.
yeah. Again, it is in essence fan fiction that a writer wrote, a prolific writer wrote, and you get that. So I think that as well that and I think that the even even if you are writing for just in a world that already exists, that I think the exercise of imagination itself is important. Now, do I believe that all things therein are worthwhile? Um,
Of course not.
of course not. That's how you get 50 Shades of Grey. Um, ugh.
Fair.
Like, I wrote a novel.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, it's
you
not.
did.
Yeah, it's on Wattpad. That's where my friend who was editing it said that we should put it. But it's Mr. Mortock's Hall of Curiosities. It's a bunch of short stories that are linked by a bunch of short stories linked together with an overarching concept.
Nice.
Which was which which really it was just a buddy saying, "Yo, you should take all these short stories, you should put them together and alter them so they work together." And I did. And no one's read it because it's on Wattpad.
No one's read it because you haven't promoted it the way I'm trying to promote my book. And
Yeah,
you're still not doing it right.
I really should at some point possibly get it professionally edited, but that's money. I'm
One,
gonna tell you
one,
right now, this don't pay very well.
I
This
um
this don't pay very
I
well, Jolt.
I've gotten a professional editor for my book and he
Hmm.
tore it to shreds. I pretty much
Yeah.
had to write everything brand spanking new. And my
Hmm.
heart was hurting because I was like, what do you mean? He goes, it's bad. Like, do it again. I was like,
It's bad. Do it again.
do it again?
Do it
Like,
again.
that's the advice?
Yeah.
And he was like, no, there's a lot of good things about it. You have something here that's going to sell. And I'm like, what? How are you going to compliment me and then also smack me in the face? And then I talked to my family about it, and my dad advised me. He goes, he's basically saying, you have the right ingredients for something good here, but you made a good tasting dish,
Hmm.
but you're serving it on a paper plate. And then that's when I thought, if I was to pick anybody to write my book, if anybody in the world to say like, you write my book, here's the story, figure it out. I came up with the idea, and I know this sounds crazy. If someone was to ghostwrite my book, I would have picked Quentin Tarantino,
Okay,
and
I can see it.
that's that's how I wrote my book.
Yeah. Which was it? There's a there's a reason why I don't like Reese Witherspoon, and it involves Kevin Smith coming in and ghostwriting some stuff and fixing dialogue, and then Reese Witherspoon being like, "Who wrote this trash?" And we're like, "It's better than it was." Um, he also wrote some dialogue for one of the Die Hard movies, which oh my god. Okay, so do you know the Die Hard conundrum?
I think so.
So Die
Elaborate.
Hard was a good movie, right? But every other Die Hard movie that came after that's a good movie was not intended to be a Die Hard movie.
Okay, I think I understand.
Yeah. So Die Hard 2 was okay, I think it was 3 was not intended to be a Die Hard movie, but it ended up being folded into that franchise and altered.
Mm,
All the
okay,
good ones were not intended to be Die Hard movies.
I'm
That's
picking up what
just
you're putting down.
yeah, that's just when you make one for the series, it's just it comes out, I guess, not a little undercooked. Um
Yeah,
but that's the nature of the beast. Sometimes you try and make something that fits in the genre of what you're doing. You try your best to create something that's going to fit in your pre-established world, and that's how you get Indiana Jones in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That's how that shit happens. Sometimes you just need to put it down and leave it alone. Um,
that's true.
and sometimes you need to keep going. Like,
I I definitely think the people who do it correctly are the people who put a full stop and then make something different that's related but in the same franchise. Like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, perfectly done. And I know I'm using a show, but I
no, that's
haven't seen
that's
it, but it's like
perfectly
fantastic.
fine. They are master classes in work,
Exactly.
and
Um,
no one expected Better Call Saul to be as fucking good as
it's really
it
good.
was. Yeah.
Yeah. But look who's here.
Now look who's this asshole. This asshole's here. Um. So Joel, how long did it take to craft the book?
Too long. No. So it started off in college. Um, I remember my professor telling us, start writing. And we went, write about what? He was like, doesn't matter, start writing. And the first day, we are like, okay, blah, 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 writing something in this notebook. And towards the end of the school year, I kind of came up with this idea when I was writing on my, composition book, was like, why do people always say world peace when they're in these beauty pageants and stuff like that? Like, if you could do something in the world, what would you do? And everybody's like, world peace. And I'm like, which world peace? Because you have several different meanings of that. And so I started writing out the different kinds of world peace there are. And as I'm writing this out, this kind of became the outline of what my book is supposed to be, the goal, right? Starting on the Book of Peace, it's this one person's ambition for world peace and what that means in this society. And then it goes on with somebody else saying, no, this is the way it's supposed to be. And then this is the way it's supposed to be. And so you have people who are left out because of these ideas and people pushing towards quote unquote world peace. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of spun the entire world into that because I just expanded and expanded. Um, and that's where it started. And eventually I got to my very first draft, and I think 2020,
Okay.
2019 ballpark. And when I wrote the first draft, I sent it up to an editor, paid quite a bit of money for that. And the editor
But
just tore it to shreds and said, do better. And I was like, bro. So ever
right.
since then, I rewrote it, and now that I have it out and it's on Amazon, I'm happy with it. Or at least happy enough with it that I can be like, here you go, read it, tell me what you think. I can go on to the next book and start writing about more characters and
Mm-hmm.
building that story. And I already started. I've already like am within the first chapter and stuff like that. And I want to push it and put out more content about it. So I
Mm-hmm.
started saying, how do I do that? I started working on a game to develop the game, and so that way people can get into the actual characters and into the lore and the story. And there's a lot going on there, especially since there's so many different perspectives on what it means to have a similar goal but different ways to get there.
Okay. All right. I like this concept. It's good
Mhm.
stuff. So, Joel, you are You are dot hacking this shit, so to so to speak. You're creating. For those of you who don't remember dot hack, God damn, I dated myself there. Dot hack was a lot of things. It was in order to get the whole story of what happened in Dot Hack, you had to watch an anime, you had to play a couple of video games, then you had to also watch an OAV that had nothing to do with what's going on. Okay, it had something to do which was going on in what was happening in Dot Hack, but it wasn't taking place inside of the computer world. It was taking place outside the computer world. So, but that's neither. I was going to say that's neither here nor there, but it is. It's very relevant. Joltïerre is expressing this world through several mediums.
Yes. You have to. You have to because there's so many different markets to touch. And we see this all the time. We see this now from Marvel, from DC, where they don't just do shows and movies. They make you watch um, Daredevil and then go from Daredevil to watch Jessica Jones, and you would have never watched Jessica Jones if it wasn't for this one episode telling you, "Oh, let's introduce this cameo character." And you're like, "Damn it!" But you have to.
Well, I mean, in order to weave the greater tapestry, in theory, yes. Um, but nobody has to watch Moon Knight. So I'm looking at you, Moon Knight. So, in the last half of Echo, what the hell was that? Um, so the Jolt is expressing this through a couple of different ways. There's music, there's the book, and there's a MOBA, right? It's a MOBA you're trying to make.
I actually talked with my developers, and we're splitting the team and doing two things at the same time. I know,
Okay.
crazy. The first thing and the easiest thing we're going to do is me and another developer. We're co-teaming a single player experience that's going to be like a 30-minute to an hour demo of just getting
Mm-hmm.
you introduced to the game, and introduced to the book, right? And this
Mm-hmm.
demo is just going to be something small, but it's going to be reminiscent of old school days like Dynasty Warriors and stuff like that, just to get you started. The other side of the team is working on the MOBA still. They're going to take a lot longer to do it, but we have passed the alpha test, or the pre-alpha testing of it. We figured out exactly what works, what doesn't work,
Mm-hmm.
and as we're developing the models and getting everything situated, they're working on that part, so that way there is something in the future to come.
And that's
The
3D modeling, right?
That's the 3D modeling and stuff like that too. But I just got my certificate in level design and what have you, and I'm starting to understand Unreal Engine a little bit better, so I can actually assist the developer or the main developer for the single player experience. We
Ooh,
can
a
get that out by
certificate.
probably I'm not going to say a date, within the next few reasonable months, I guess you can say.
So,
Um,
where do you get certificates for level design from?
Udemy, actually. Udemy has these little programs that you kind of watch and participate in, and as you're understanding the material, they give you little certificates to say like, "Hey, congratulations, you completed this course." They also have like free trials and stuff like that too, so you can actually look up what you want to learn. And I'm not sponsored by them, but I should be. I'm just Super Saiyan, okay? No, but it was great. It was a great experience, and now I'm also learning, going full time into university, and
Oh,
getting my degree in operations management as well, learning about the markets and learning about how to, sell the product. Yeah, I'm stretched thin.
so do you think that's going to have an effect on your work?
Being stretched thin.
Yes.
I don't know. I really don't know. All I know is that I have to do it. Like there's no um yeah, but it's hard or anything like that. It's just you got to do it. You still have to wake up every day. You still have to pay the bills. So
Mm-hmm.
it sucks, but it's gonna pay off, or at least that's my motivation behind it. Is I can't sit and be like, well, I'd rather have the comfort of not doing the work
Mm-hmm.
So because I don't want to just sit there and live paycheck to paycheck, I have to actually make something happen. And if
Mm-hmm.
I want to retire correctly, I have to make it on my own efforts with my own hands.
Hmm. Interesting. So, okay, so I found, this is just me. I found that one needs to have the ability to focus on a particular goal,
But
or um know where to focus, because I've always been, and this is just me, I've always been the opinion of, if you spread yourself too thin, the toast doesn't get properly buttered. That's a weird analogy. That's a weird analogy.
I mean,
And
I prefer having my butter spread across the toast than to have it lumped in the middle. Like I don't.
that's fair. Pixie, what would you like? General or bad life advice, or specific life advice? Someone redeem bad life advice. We're gonna give bad life
And
advice.
and it depends on if they just want it from you or want it from me as well.
Oh, you have. Oh no, you're giving bad life advice as well. You've
Okay,
been
I'm
roped
down.
into this. All right, specific bad life advice about cars. That clunking noise is just your car wanting attention. Don't do it. It'll get spoiled.
Okay, that one's pretty good. I give it a solid like 7 out of 10.
All right, excellent. Do better then.
Okay, why deal with the problem of fixing your car when you can just get a new one?
That's not bad life advice.
That's that's bad life advice.
That's bad life advice.
That's
Just just forget about that car. Get a new car.
you
All
need an
right,
oil
that's fair.
change. Just get a new one. Just
Just
straight
get a
up.
new one. Like, fuck this fucking car needing new oil. I'll just get a new one. A better, less demanding car. Um, so, there's your bad life advice, Pixie. I hope you appreciated it. So, what is the what has been the development cycle on this game?
Oh, um, I don't know how to answer that question. So the development cycle was the first thing I did was I created a GDD and I started
Hold on
learning.
there, champ. We don't do acronyms here. Explain.
A GDD is a game design document. It
Mm-hmm.
basically lays out
It's a
what the
design
game is
bible.
going to be. Yeah, it's a design bible for the game and what
Yeah.
everything is supposed to incorporate.
Mm-hmm.
For me right now, just to get to the alpha, it was a 25-page document. We also kind of figured out how we're going to do the financing because obviously accounting is a big step when it comes to getting other people on board. Because, a lot of people, like most people, don't want to work for free, but they're willing to do certain contracts and what have you. So
I
we got,
work for peanuts.
yes.
For being developing games for a startup is not a lucrative.
It's not.
It's definitely not. I'm definitely am not in the line of work I'm in. Can be very lucrative, but being part of a startup is not. A, it's not by any means going to have you rolling in the dough.
Exactly. And so setting up all of that stuff saying, hey, just in case we do make it big, let's lay out everything right now. Just to provide that comfort for anybody who wants to be on board.
Yeah.
We wanted getting a small team. We started certain things. Obviously, it was there's some hiccups here and there, but nothing too big. And what we decided to do was our core development team decided, hey, instead of focusing on this one giant MOBA, let's actually get something out that's smaller, a 30-minute game demo that doesn't require multiplayer, that's easy to kind of construct, And since you've already learned a lot of the basics on how everything's done, you and this one other development person can do this. And they're talking about me, of course. So me and this one person can do this part of the game, develop it with just two people, and then kind of promote that, hey, we're building a MOBA. We've already came out with a game on our own. Anybody who wants to pitch in to help us build a multiplayer experience, this is what we've done, this is what it looks like, and able to show it. And that's the same thing with the book. Like, instead of writing the concept of the book, I have a physical copy of the book that you can get, and now you can actually see, you know, the proof that it is there, and
Mm-hmm.
not just something that was thought of and it's like, this is a good idea.
So when you say a 30-minute demo, and also, so were we talking about a functional look at how the MOBA mechanics work, or are we talking about the single player Muso game that you were building?
It's just going to be a single player experience with a specific mission. Nothing too crazy. We might sell it for like $1 or something like
So you're
that. I
talking
don't have
about
the
the so
specifics.
you're talking about the Dynasty Warriors style Muso game.
Yeah, kind of like that, where it's just to get you introduced into the lore and the characters and how we want the game to look for the multiplayer experience, and then promote that and say, hey, look, we have the book if you want to read the book and get into the lore. We are developing the game for the MOBA. If anybody has any experience with that and wants to be involved, please contact us over here. And it's just a kind of like getting people's feet wet, so to speak.
So you're hoping that this single player demo experience for the Dynasty Warriors style game will attract interest for the MOBA.
Exactly.
Okay. Based on the virtue of this was ideally this was good. Hey, we have another project. Would you like
Exactly.
to join it? It will be good as well.
Right.
Okay.
And then that way people have some kind of idea of like, okay, I can get behind this.
Okay. Mainly because the team has created something fun to begin with.
Right.
Okay.
And that's the whole goal. But
Yeah. All right. Okay. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I'm. So this book that you made has been in the works for a while, a
right.
really long time. It sounds like if it was. So like, how many years are we talking?
Since the first concept,
Hmm?
I would say 10 years, but
Okay.
really
Since the
actually putting in the
refined
work.
concept.
The refined concept has been since around 2018. Now it's
Okay.
like 2019.
Okay. So did you write the whole book? So you wrote it, sent it in to the editor. The editor's like, this is dog shit, but it's got good bones. And then you went and
Right.
rewrote it.
And I rewrote it in about 2018 to 20 till recently. It's been here and there, working on a
Hmm.
chapter at a time,
Okay.
working on the whys behind the characters instead of just the character going to a specific place. It
Yeah.
was the why. I mean, you see this all the time in horror stuff, right? Why would they go into the closet or why would they go into the room knowing that something just popped out there? There's no
Hmm.
why behind it. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm just going to do it. And so instead of just doing that in my book, I decided to write the whys. And the whys are always leading up to a specific goal, right? But
Hmm.
and I know I'm giving myself the low drum thing. Leave me alone. Um, so I decided to do it like that. And when everybody has a specific passion behind the reason why they're doing it, it kind of links to those people that may be having that character specific. I mean, you've read the first chapter and you already saw that Juliet, the first character in the book, already has a goal in mind by the end of the
Yeah.
first chapter. And it makes you be like, okay, well, where is she going with
Yeah.
this?
That's what pushed me to the second chapter was the idea. Okay, so there's a goal in mind. Okay, I gotta know what that is. Right? Like, I gotta
Exactly.
see how they execute this plan that they have, which is laid out fairly early, right? Our
Yep.
first character's real desires, and then you're like, okay, I gotta know how this. I gotta see how this pans out. How does this pan out?
Hmm. And no spoilers, but you see this so early on, and then it switches perspective.
Hmm.
and all of a sudden you're with somebody else. You're not even with Juliet anymore, and
No.
they have a goal.
You know who else did
Eh,
that?
who?
George R.
Quentin
R.
Tarantino.
Martin.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I was thinking
Mm-hmm.
Quentin Tarantino because if you've seen Pulp Fiction, you know exactly where I'm going with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
There's a lot of interconnecting stories, and it's always from a different person's POV.
exactly, and that's how I wrote my book. And I really loved Quentin Tarantino's point of view, and I like that's exactly why I wrote it like that. And I find it interesting, and I hope readers will find it interesting as well. And when you get to the end, I still want to know your favorite character because right now you haven't told me anything.
The front
And
cover.
dang, dang.
Yeah. You're not getting shit out of me. You're not. Oh, you should send me a link so I can pin it.
Oh, for the thingy. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. You should do
Um,
that.
yeah, I should. I tend to forget simple things like this. Um,
I forgot too.
yeah, but it's my thing. I'm supposed to be responsible
Mm-hmm.
for my own stuff.
So writing wise, who are your inspirations? Because we all have inspirations. Like when I wrote my short stories, I was Guillermo del Toro and Neil Gaiman were really my inspirations there.
Yeah.
So who are your inspirations?
I wouldn't say it was specifically. I don't idolize anybody. I do like Quentin Tarantino's point of view and how he does the work, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't idolize him either. When I kind of came up with this concept, this was kind of like the ideal of. I'm a religious person, so it has a lot of religious kind of backdrops to it as well as you can see in. Let's just pick any book. When it comes to religion, a lot of the books show flawed people who have ideas on what they want to do, and then they're flawed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's something very human about knowing this,
Yeah.
is that we can all have intentions behind something. We can all
Mm-hmm.
want world peace. We can all want, justice for all and equality and everything like that. But to understand that humans are flawed from the get go, and if we have high expectations, we're going to hit disappointment. Is just something that I wanted to put into the book, and saying there is no one person to follow and idolize. We shouldn't go to people and think of people like that. What we should do is take the best out of people, learn from their mistakes, and try to best incorporate those lessons into our own practices.
So you had no outside inspirations then when you wrote the book.
Not necessarily, other than my own personal stuff. No.
Okay, interesting. I find that very interesting. Because usually when you are writing, usually there is if not an inspiration, you're like you as writers
Mhm.
many times you not that someone else's work bleeds into your own, but there's usually someone that you're like, this inspired me to write, or drove me to this drove me to pursue this in my case, I played D&D as a small child,
Yeah.
as a small unit, not super small, right? Not super small, because that's a lot of math. So in second edition, I was introduced to that when I was but a younger lad with simpler adventures. To Because my stepfather unit was big into it, and also big into fantasy books. And when I first started designing, right, my inspiration was not necessarily Dungeons and Dragons, but the experience that I had was my
Mhm.
inspiration. I want to give that experience to someone else. And I was garbage at it to begin with. Anything I had to run with me there, and so it was all homebrew in a basement. But eventually I got to developing things that stood on their own. And the my inspiration obviously was Gary Gygax, the one of the core founder of Dungeons and Dragons, who made it in a garage in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Let's go. So you're welcome, world. So the and when I went forward with it, right? I always was very thankful for having been exposed to that at a young age. And what drove me to write short stories was originally I wanted to write fantasy stories because I grew up reading Dragonlance novels, which were the novels which were truncated versions of the stories that my stepfather unit would tell me to help me sleep. He would like condense the story. And then one day I'm like, man, I really want to know this, what happens next in this story. And he said, here, plunk, read it. Which is why I had a collegiate level reading in third grade. So
Wow.
the thing is that I found that as going forward, you always develop your own sort of style of stuff, but there always seems to be a catalyst, something that drives you to pursue this endeavor. Um, that drives you to pursue the endeavor. You're like, oh well, I saw this, maybe I can do this, or I witnessed this, maybe I could do this. So, do you have anything that like this is what drove me to pursue what I'm doing now?
I've never really had a specific instance of, hey, this is the reason why I'm writing this book. It was more of the fact, I think it was a lot of little things. For
Mm-hmm.
example, let's take Star Trek, right?
Okay, let's take Star Trek.
I I saw the most. Oh, we got an ad. Here we go. Oh, wait.
It won't show up on the VOD, but if you want,
I
I can throw something together for 90
well,
seconds.
let me say it like this. Let me kind of get the whole thing about Star Trek. I'm not
Yeah,
a
do
huge
it, do it, do it.
Star Trek fan. I know there's a lot of people who love Star Trek, and I
Yes.
don't hate them at all because Star Trek has a huge story. It's got so many different things about it, and I love the fact that it's a big world, right?
Mm-hmm.
But just like Star Trek or Game of Thrones or anything like that, I try not to dive deep into it because I don't want to be too influenced by it. I know about Game of Thrones, I know about Lord of the Rings. I've seen a couple of the Lord of the Rings movies, but I didn't dive deep into reading the novel because I didn't want to get heavily influenced by those kind of worlds. So that way somebody goes, "Oh, you were definitely inspired by this." Like, yeah, there might be a little inspiration here and there because I was like, "Hey, that's a cool looking character," or something like that, and I kind of like build off of my own imagination on how to do that, right? But I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
give anybody too much credit. I never watched Game of Thrones or read any of the books from that series because of that reason. Same thing for Lord of the Rings, and then going back into Star Trek as we're finishing this ad segment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so when I saw Star Trek, I think I saw a couple of things when I was younger, but
We
the
talking
biggest
original
part,
Star Trek, Next
the
Generation?
original Star Trek,
Oh,
right
okay,
when I
sweet,
was
sweet,
younger.
sweet.
So I started like I saw a couple of the newer movies, and there was one character in particular that I saw that was played by Sophia Butea. Am I pronouncing that her name right? Uh, I saw this character, and I actually got to meet her, the actress, and she's amazing. She's wonderful. Like
Very cool.
I gave her a copy of the book and I told her like this. I said, "Your character, I saw your character in this movie. I don't know anything about the character other than the fact that I love the look and the appearance of your character inspired the way I imagine the set of characters in my book." And I told her I was like, if you see a similar character, just know that it's inspired by you, but not necessarily a copy verbatim. Just don't forget. And she was like, okay, thank you. But I gave her a copy of the book. I signed it for her and everything as well. She's an amazing person. I'm very fortunate I got a chance to meet her. But it's little things like that that I kind of were inspired by. but it wasn't a direct rip off of those things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
So that's actually really cool.
yeah,
I've not had an opportunity to meet any of my anybody who's particularly really resonated with me. I don't go to Comic Con, so I haven't been able to like meet like Frank Miller, who has a prolific body of work. I've not gotten to meet any of the comic authors I really like. I've never gotten to meet any of the authors I like. I can't meet Gary Gygax. He's dead. Um, so
fair.
that's a bummer. Um, and there isn't really a designer that I'm. Since then, that's really, inspired me or driven me to create. And afterwards, it became self generating. I
Yes.
want to continue to design because I want to get better at my craft, which is weird. Making games is weird. Tabletop or electronic, because at some point you have to say this is good enough.
Exactly.
This is and when you're writing for uh, when you're writing for games, you run into issues where you're like, well, am I over explaining this? Am I, are we? And it's the same with written material like literature. Are you over explaining something? Are you going too in depth, too in detail? Does this really need to be this
Yes.
this wordy? Is it easy to consume? Which I think is ease of consumption.
Hmm.
I think is another, the ability to get the information or to get the story across in a way that makes sense and a way that someone can digest is
Right.
very easy. I'm not saying that work needs to be quote dumbed down or anything. It's just when you get to the very meat and potatoes of reading the book, right? Of reading the book, then it's it's about, I think, conveying what you're trying to say without overwhelming a reader. There is a
Yeah.
book, Sword of Shannara, which Terry Brooks wrote that. I think Terry Brooks wrote that. And it is designed. They say that a lot of the you can tell that a lot of the inspiration was Lord of the Rings. I couldn't get through the first chapter because a giant shows up and acts as a talking head for a
Okay.
chapter, telling you the entire history of the world. And it's very, could you not have given this to us in a different format as opposed to just
Great.
dumping this on me in a very dry manner? Some people say that the book is really, really good. I mean, it's won awards, but I couldn't do it because I couldn't digest the information. Now, I read it some insert number of years ago, but to this day, I'm pretty sure if I picked it up again, I'd be like,
Yeah, because
so
it's info dumping.
long.
And it's a balance. Like you have to be able to convey the information to do it in the right way that's entertaining and not just like, but you can't try to be perfect either. So
No.
I'm pretty sure the reason why it got awards is not because of the info dumping, but it was because it was good enough to be able to cast that net and get as
Mm-hmm.
many fish as possible. And that's the same thing I look at my book is yeah, there's going to be imperfections in it. In fact, having the author say, "Hey, your dialogue is really good," was a huge compliment because this is coming from
Very
a
cool.
prolific writer. This is
Yeah.
somebody who's, their career is writing. And they
Mm-hmm.
said your sentence structure could be better. You need
Mm-hmm.
to like do a little bit more practice in that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, but the biggest thing in here is just the formatting, like your spacing and stuff like that needs to get a lot better. But after that, I wouldn't have like you could put this out and I would probably buy it. I was like, wow, like that it means a lot to me. He goes, and
Oh
you're a
yeah.
young writer. he goes, and you're a young writer, and this is your first book.
Hmm.
He was like, my first book took me 20 something years to write because I've been revising it ever since it first came out.
Yeah.
And I was like, that means a lot to me because it hurts a little bit to say like this ain't good, but it also was like I wasn't expecting it to be good in the first place.
Okay.
You still have a lot to grow, and it's good to
Oh yeah,
hear that
absolutely.
because he sees that in me. He goes, you need to practice. I'm like, bet. And so that means to me, my second book's going to be better, and then my third book's going to be even better. And anybody who's interested in the first book is really going to be interested in the second book. And
Hmm.
that just means a lot to me because that means people are going to be interested in it the same way this other author has been interested in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was nice. It was really nice to hear. It hurt a little bit, but it was nice to hear. I needed it.
Well, it always stings when you get told that you need to rework stuff. When I first worked on 52, it
Mhm.
was I thought I was writing it in a way that anybody who hadn't gamed before would be able to play it. I mean, it runs on a single deck of cards. Its rules are very simple, and I thought, okay, this this manual that I've written for it is good, right?
Yeah.
And so I gave it to the Don Father, the guy I work for, and he went, I can't.
Wow.
Damn tofu. Um, they so when he sent it back, he said I can't play it. I don't understand how to play this. And I'm like, the rules are right there. He's like, I know, but I'm having difficulty following it. And so and the Downfather had never played a RPG before. And I'm like, you are perfect for this. Perfect. Why are we not why no likey? And we got into a concept of, well, I made a very good book. It sold very well at conventions. And then I realized I'm really good at what I do. So selling something at a convention, I'm very good at. I'm like a carnival barker. But then the nature of, and I was doing demos right at the same time, so it was
Yeah.
easier for people to understand I wasn't doing a demo for Don. And so he sent it back, and my initial reaction was fuck you. And then my next reaction was probably one of the weirdest, was fuck you, fine. You want a larger book? Whatever. Because I was stuck with a specific page number because we were stapling it. And for those of you who don't know about binding, when you're stapling something, you have a very, very limited amount of pages you can use. And you're beholden to the number 4 because it's double sided. So you fold a piece of paper in half, you get 4 sides, right? So ideally, ideally, for you to be able to print correctly, you have to stick within your page numbers that the the fucking staples can handle, and you have to then make sure that you're working in force. It's very difficult. And I said, fine, but what are we gonna do for binding? And the Dawnfather said, let me worry about that. And I was like, fine, fuck you. You want to worry about it? You can worry about it. You want me to you want a bigger book? Here's a bigger book. And I did it, and it was magnificent. But we sent it off to an. Okay, so we sent this thing off to an editor, right?
Okay.
And the editor read it and came back, and I had edited this thing 3 times. We sent it off to a professional editor. The editor came back with 2 changes to it. And I'm like, why the fuck did we pay this person? And then I was like, good job, Damie. Good job. But I was forced to do it. I would never edit my own work again. Any author, I think, and I think this, any author is too close to their work to properly edit it. Because in your mind, it's always going to make sense. What do you think about that?
Um, yes, but also it's good to have somebody who's a third party who's going to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
To also walk with you. Like peer review is an important thing because
Yes, it is.
what I've learned is if I get somebody who doesn't like, if I have a friend whose second language is English and I'm
Mm-hmm.
writing a book,
Mm-hmm.
I go to them because I trust them the most and I go, tell me what you think. And they read the paragraph or they'll read the chapter and they're like, I didn't understand this. That's good
Okay.
enough for me because that tells me someone who speaks English as their second language didn't understand it and it's not good enough. No matter how I think it's properly written, if they can't understand it, then there's a chance that other people wouldn't understand it.
Okay. I see where we're
And
getting this litmus test idea from.
that's where I kind of figured it out like hey, look, if it's good enough for somebody who can read that, then it's good
Mm-hmm.
enough for me. I don't have to be perfect. I just have to be good enough to consider someone who, is actually trying to read it if they can understand it or not.
Yeah.
And from there, I can edit it later. From there, if somebody's just like, hey, look, I didn't like how you worded the sentence, blah, 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 blah. You could have worded it better. I wish you had added more detail. Cool, we can fix that. But the
Yeah.
core of the message needs to be understood first. So I definitely think that it does take a second person to look at it.
Yeah. Hence. Okay. So, but in this tri tri, you would be then discussing a trifecta. Your
Mhm.
editor, and then a second person who and I find the ESL concept to be a very interesting litmus test of did I did I explain this correctly?
Exactly.
I've never thought about that. Handing it to somebody who doesn't particularly speak the language, uh, in the same way that we would to express whether or not this is done in a way that other people, because you're right. Also, that might also help for if so. What's your target audience? I guess the next question I should
My
ask.
targeted audience is young adult, right? My thing is like I think high school is the youngest I would consider this for. Maybe like if they're mature eighth grade or something like that, but honestly, like high school to 18 in
Mm-hmm.
college area, something fun, something light, but at the same time, there's a lot of specific things I've put into there, some potent sentences and words and alliteration and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of stuff that you would study in high school, right? To be used, at least for this book, the
I love
foundation of
alliteration.
everything, right? And that's where I kind of wanted to go off of it because everything after this, I can water it down a little bit more and give you more content. But at least for the foundation, I wanted to showcase saying this is the way I write. This is how I want it to be presented. This is the story and the core focus of it. Everything
Mm-hmm.
else can come later. We want to be fluffy with our words on this chapter or in this book and stuff like that. We want to talk about anything else, we can go that route. But for right now, this is the core of the book. This is something I encourage everybody to like start from. Let's say I do write 20 books down the road, I would always go back to this book and saying, did you understand this?
Okay.
And yeah,
So you want to make sure that your foundation is solid
exactly.
for anything else coming afterwards. So in writing this, right? And okay, so why a Muso game? Um, which is the term for the colloquial term for a Dynasty Warriors style game, usually based off the Muso meter that they put in there. But
Yeah.
why? How does that connect? That style of a combat game connect to your novel.
Well, it started with the MOBA. I love MOBAs for one,
Mm-hmm.
because it's about strategizing, right? It's about thinking about not just going in there and attacking the first thing you see, but it's also
Mm-hmm.
not too lenient like some other story-based games like Final Fantasy and stuff like that as well. It
Mm-hmm.
gives some action, but it also allows you to be like, all right, I want to get into the lore. And a lot of the lore in Dynasty Warriors, for example, gets you involved because you have objectives. You have different
Mm-hmm.
things that you play as your character in your role play per se.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Dynasty Warriors type of games and the MOBA all kind of incorporate that while still giving you that drive to move.
Mm-hmm.
The passion of I'm not gonna let anything stand in my way. Now, fighting games or anything like that, I mean, you could have made this game into a D&D specific. I think any game can be that because we've seen it happen where, they'll take Batman and create a card game out of him or something like that. It doesn't necessarily matter um, the medium per se, but in this specific one, the reason why we went towards that was because we wanted to tell the story through the game, but also have people engaged as well. And we think that's the best route.
Okay. 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 Let's try it again. How does the Muso game connect to your book? Because it's a very specific design
Yep.
of you fighting lots of enemies, right? The idea is that you will be fighting lots of enemies right on a field. That is that is the concept of a Dynasty Warriors game. So
I'm trying
that's the
to avoid the why because I don't want to give a spoiler away. But
okay. All right, you should have started. You should have led with that.
there's there's
Should have
death
led
in the
with that.
book.
Okay, okay. So
Somebody dies.
okay, so we cannot say why the Dynasty Warriors style works for the book. All we know is that it does work conceptually with the book, right? Conceptual wise, this style of game does appropriately tie into the book, right?
There's I'm gonna say it like this. There's chaos in the book.
Mm-hmm.
The title of the book is Peace, or the subtitle is Peace,
It
but
is.
there's chaos.
Uh huh.
And that's the style of game that has to fit is because you're in the middle of the chaos and you're trying to get to the
Ah,
peace.
there we go. Okay, all right. See now, picking up what you're putting down. Picking up. I'm pick. This is me. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing. Um,
You're winking.
I'm winking. This is me picking up exactly what you're putting down. See, I'm. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. I got this. I got this. Right. I'm picking it up. I'm putting it down. I'm picking it up. I see what you got. I'm putting it down. So okay, so that's pretty cool. Now, a MOBA is a hard way to deliver a story. Um, because at the core of it, okay, people just want to move around and make stuff, murder other stuff. Now, like take League of Legends, right?
Yeah.
Okay, its story has been rewritten a couple of times. They got rid of a whole section of their story and built a different version of the story, and then had to reconnect certain characters who were part of that particular part of the story to the new part of the story, which is never easy. But there, most people couldn't cite to you the lore of League of Legends, right? They couldn't do that,
Right.
because they don't care. And like Dota was apparently both Dota and League of Legends had enough material in their games to spawn animated series for it. You know,
Yeah.
Arcane in League of Legends, literally, Dota for where's the Dragon Age? No, it was Dota. Literally that for on the Netflix. So does this bother you on some capacity that people might not care about the lore of when they play the MOBA, they just want to make murder?
Well, honestly, it motivates me in the perspective of what I see it as is that they're able to grab the content and make something out of it, right?
Okay,
And
yes.
whereas League of Legends and Dota kind of made the game first and then created the lore, if we look at Smite, for example, which is another MOBA, the lore was been around for thousands of years, and they made a game off of it. The same way Dynasty Warriors had lore that's been around for thousands of years, and they made a game out of it. And that's the kind of gist I'm getting at. Is I'm not following League of Legends, I'm not following Dota, I'm following those games that have the story and then made the game.
Okay. So mechanically, because I'm really interested in this, because the idea of cross media uh, delivery of a game or delivery of a story really is very interesting. Because you can then take your work and turn it into a thing that all of the media tells a different part of the story. You know, every aspect leads back to this core. Now, mechanically, we know we know that mechanically uh, your your combat game is going to be based around the Dynasty Warriors mechanic, right? Lots of
Right.
enemies, weapon. Mechanically, what do you intend for the MOBA? Are we talking tower defense or area control? What kind of thoughts did you go into with the design for there?
One of the interesting things about Smite or the other games is they always have their tower set up. They always have, some kind of ancient or a titan to attack. Like it's always like a defense of the ancients type of situation. But
Well, in the case of Smite, yes. In the case of League, it's just tower defense.
right. Um in that essence, what I did differently was I said we're not going to focus on the tower. We're not going to focus on the characters itself. We're going to focus
Mm-hmm.
on the story of how you're building your army. So it's going to have a lot of variations in between the waves and how those soldiers present themselves, um, and add a lot of personality to the world itself.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I hated was, and I started with Dota 2 and went eventually into Smite, was the minions never felt like they meant anything
No,
other
they
than
don't.
just fodder XP. And so I
Yes.
thought about that and I was like, no, they can mean something. They can have their own story. And
Okay.
so I decided to I love chess, by the way. I'm a big chess player. And
It's a
I
good game.
every people kind of like say, oh well the pawns don't matter. Or those are the people who don't really know how to play chess,
Those are the
right?
people who
The,
don't want to play.
the pawns actually have their own specific names. The rooks and the knights, they all have their specific names. And when we forget about those things, we kind of like lose track of what's actually the objective and when we're playing chess. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we go into a game like Smite or what have you, or even Dota, if we want to go back to Dota, it's not necessarily the player. It's how the whole game is designed. It's not about
Mm-hmm.
one person, it's about the
No.
team.
Yes.
Um, so when we go to Dynasty Warriors or we're going into this game, you might be like, "Oh, well, I'm just gonna kill the minions,"
Mm-hmm.
but those minions have different things. Those minions have special perks with them. You might attack a minion that maybe just like an archer or what have you, or maybe just like a soldier, but that formation that's set up will prevent you from attacking that archer because now you have a defender blocking the archer attacking you, and you
Mm-hmm.
can't get to the archer who's picking you off because you've set up your defenses so poorly that they were able to steamroll you with just minions.
Oh damn. Okay. All right. So you're aiming for a more strategic, in-depth look to even the trash mob, so to speak.
Exactly.
Okay, that's very interesting. That's bold design choice, I think. But if pulled off, I think that would be good. Now, the so you're trying to appeal to a more strategic mind.
Yes.
Cool, 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 cool. That is very interesting. I don't think I've particularly seen that in a in that style because usually that style of game is go up against horde, beat horde, um, do do thing that wins against horde.
You usually see
Um,
that in RTSs as well.
yeah, Well, I mean, yes, that that is the entire point of an RTS. There's no getting around. Although in an RTS, there is a lot of tactics that have to go into there. Your squad based mechanics. Your how are you building this particular phalanx of units? You know, do you cover your bases by, even in something like StarCraft? Do you cover your bases by only having infantry style troops, or do you want to add fire bats to there for close range combat? Do you want to put any of your mechanical units in there? There's a lot that kind of goes into the thought of, now that I've collected all of these dudes, I'm going to send them to go whoop on the other dudes and ideally destroy some structures along the way, because at the end of the day, it's, if you destroy the enemy's command center, that's it. That's how it work.
And essentially, I'd be blending both a MOBA and a RTS together by doing this.
Okay, very interesting. That is something that. So the most interesting thing I ever saw, and I couldn't afford to buy it or play it, and it didn't have a very large following at the time, but there was something that I found really interesting. So there was a MOBA style game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it actually was, part of it was blended with an RTS, in that there was a commander. So you would have certain people, and then you'd have a commander. And the commander played very differently. They had a top down. And as the MOBA people captured objectives and moved from place to place, points would start to get accrued for the commander. And the commander could then drop things onto their, like, turrets or health packs, yes, or any innumerable number of things to help defend to defend or harass and attack the enemy. And unfortunately, it just did not, like, this was during that awkward period of time when some games when there was just a glut of online games, right? Now it's not as the field is not as saturated as it was at one point. And it also was, apparently the idea was great but not very well implemented, which is a bummer. And it was like $30 to buy with like a $10 subscription fee. It was like, why? Wow. What am I doing here? Why am I doing this? They priced themselves weird, because people were at that point, like, now freemium is the order of the land, which I think is a decent way to do things. I think you get a rotating cast of characters and then buy up what you want. But as far as mechanics, so as far as things in books that really excite you, what would you say is something that really, when you're reading, right, you're like, this is really something I wanted to see. This is something that really catches my interest.
My favorite thing when I read, I mean, everybody likes conflict, but my favorite thing is when you finally get that showdown that you've been waiting for.
Oh, yeah.
Like, let's go. Like, let's do it. And then you see it, and then plot twist. And your jaw just drops. And you're like, oh, I did not expect that. I was waiting for the showdown. You gave me the showdown.
Yeah.
Why did you add this in there? Like, this is unnecessary.
Right?
And I love that.
I love a good twist in a book. I do. I love I like when something subverts my expectations. When I think I know what's happening, and then it's like, surprise, bastard, you don't know shit. Exactly. I'm like, ooh, excellent. I don't know shit. This is perfect for me.
The same feeling that we got when we watched what's that Will Smith movie? There's
been a lot of Will Smith movies.
The one with the dog. Oh my gosh.
I Am Legend.
I Am Legend. We saw I Am Legend. We're afraid for Will Smith. We're like, oh my gosh, it's about to happen. Will Smith's about to fight some of those zombie things.
Yeah.
and then the dog dies, and you're like, wait, what? Like, I was not expecting this. Like, why would you do that? Like, that's not fair. And
Right? Why would
it
you
was
do something like that?
it was the most profound moment in the entire movie, and it wasn't even a build-up. It was just a side moment, and you're like, that. Wait, hold on, like, and it sucks, but it also feels amazing having that moment of just shock and awe. And to be honest, I want to add that into the game as much as possible because, like as you said, the game that you brought up, it was done incorrectly and
It
done
was
at the
done
wrong time.
incorrectly.
If that game came out today or within the next few months, like I'm planning to come out with my game, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's the same game, but if a similar game came out to that, I believe that it would launch, it would take off.
Yeah. I mean, because it's very unique, and I think that one of the things that in books, in games, in media itself, people are looking for something to be interesting. They're looking for something I think that breaks the mold on what they would expect from this particular piece of medium in order to make things interesting. Because there is a lot of like let's look at YA novels, right? Look at young adult
Mhm.
novels. A lot of them are very much beat by beat by beat, while different characters, while different concepts, while different you know, while different characters, while different scenarios, a lot of them follow the same beats.
Right.
Now, and almost every story follows the hero's journey. If you're dealing with a singular, the oldest archetype of story ever, of course, is
Mhm.
the hero's journey. It's by whether you intend to do it or not. Most of the time, you are inadvertently following the concept of the hero's journey. Build
Right.
up,
Right.
identification of hero, identification of enemy, build up, conflict point, catharsis. Hero learns something about themselves. It's the growth aspect of a. Now there are some books that don't follow the hero's journey. You really would. I would really be hard pressed to say that the hero's journey is something that's expressed in, say, Game of Thrones. Some characters seem to have it, other characters don't. But it is. That's what happens when you deal with
Yeah.
multi perspective characters. Some of them will undergo their own journey. And now, you had said that you use multiple characters' perspectives in your book, right?
Right.
Okay, and so everybody has their own particular goals that they're trying to achieve, their own way that they're going about it. Did you find that difficult then to write each character uniquely?
At first, yes, but then I realized everybody has a goal. Everybody
Yeah.
has their own hero's journey,
Mm-hmm.
and the why behind it, building out and fleshing out those characters. Even a side character that I have, I'm not going to mention his name, but there's
Yeah.
a side character that's only in there for a chapter, and you can see the passion behind him. He goes, "What was I supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any other options. You
Yeah.
haven't given me one. You've taken away everything from me. I don't have a choice."
Yeah.
And in that moment, in his own character's like hero journey, you see that in this tiny little chapter, and then that's it. And then that's all you get. And I want to relate that tiny little character to somebody who feels that they don't have that choice. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a choice to, go out and have fun with people. I have to pay the bills, or
Yeah.
I can't go out and do that thing I wanted to do because I don't have the option to do that. I've been dealing with these medical bills for the past 10 years. I don't have the chance to go and work full time, or I don't have the chance to go and be who I want to be because I've never been given that opportunity. So what else
Okay.
am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And that's a side character.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to kind of present that as saying, no, we're not done here. There's a lot more to the story
Yeah.
because there's a
Yeah.
lot of people involved. Yeah.
I like it. There is a lot of there's a lot to be said for even side characters feeling like they have weight, like they have agency, and that I think can be difficult to
Mhm.
create characters that have agency in their, even in their own story. Now,
Yeah.
what was the biggest challenge for you writing? We'll go through a couple of challenges actually. What was the biggest challenge for you writing through, writing multiple character perspectives, but what was your biggest difficulty providing aid? Like, was it difficult, do you think, for you originally to provide agency for these characters to make them, feel like they have agency in their own story, like they are the driving force there?
Um, I'll kind of go back to that side character. That side character wasn't written in the first draft of my book.
Okay.
And the reason why he needed to be included is because there needed to be a reason why things were happening and the reason why people were feeling some type of way. And as I'm, you know, deciding what I'm going to do with the characters and stuff like that, as I'm
Mm-hmm.
starting writing the basis of the reason why these people, or let's say Juliet, is going down that road,
Mm-hmm.
or the reason why the overseer is going to meet those people,
Yes.
is it all interconnects because nobody is an island at the end of the day. So the
Mm-hmm.
reason why we connect with each other, the reason why I connect with you, is because we have our own hero story. And to me, you're the NPC, and for you,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the NPC, and we just happen to cross paths. And
Yes.
in this book, that's the whole point: is we're not an island. My reaction to you is going to affect you. Your
Mm-hmm.
reaction to me is going to affect me, and
Mm-hmm.
it could be for better or worse, but at
Okay.
the end of the day there's going to be a lesson. um and that's something that we have to be wary of, that every connection that we have should be cherished and taken with absolute, like, importance,
Mm-hmm.
because it could be for a second or it could be for 100 years, but we're going to affect each other, or we're going to affect each other one way or another.
Okay. And that is, so then connection seems to be a big thing that you're you're talking about in this particular story. The connection in between, the connection that the characters have to the story, but also the connection that the characters have to themselves.
Yeah.
Did you find that difficult to sew together, or did that feel like it came together organically?
At first it didn't feel as authentic as I wanted it, but then it took the it took me it took me to not focus on one character,
Mm-hmm.
but each character to do that. Once I started thinking about the characters individually, it was easy for me to think about that, because it took a
Okay.
lot of breaks in between. It was like, okay, so now person A just ran into person B. I need to
Yes.
think on the perspective of person A. How does he feel about this? And then
Mm-hmm.
now I have to switch perspectives and go into perspective B and be like, well, how does he feel about this? Or
Okay.
she? Yeah. And that's what ended up happening with this book. And I could have fleshed it out more. I could have written it and elaborated on full details, but the point was not to do that. The point was to give of a story of multiple people interacting in a timely manner.
Uh huh.
And I feel that when you read the rest of it, you're going to be like, I want more. I wish I had more. That was the whole
Yeah.
point of this book, is to want more.
So when it came to dialogue, since you have so many different people, it can be difficult sometimes to engage in a to make sure that nobody sounds the same. I guess
Right.
is the, to make sure that each character has its own, has their own voice and has their, that if you read this character in this character's perspective, how they talk, how they act, you're like, okay, I know that it's said character, as opposed to, well, this character kind of talks and acts the same as character B.
Mm-hmm.
Virtually, you're like, well, these are just basically the, there's
Same
no
character.
real difference in vernacular or anything. Were you able, do you think, to capture each person's voice?
Yes, it took me a bit to figure that out because, especially for females, it's harder for me to understand the why behind them. But what I
Yes.
did was I set a specific mood for each one. For character A, who's super serious, they're like, we don't have time. So when they spoke with that intention of I every word matters. Like everything that I say matters, and I need you to be understanding of what I'm trying to say. Now,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I also think about too is our vocabulary. Our vocabulary, our slang may differ a little bit, but for the most part, we all say the same things. Um,
Yes.
and how we say it. The only difference is our mood, because
Yes.
I can be talking to you in a specific matter, and it can be very precise, or I
Mm-hmm.
could be very sloppy when I talk because it doesn't really matter what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? Like, and but we're all in that same conundrum of we say the same things. It's just how to say it, when to say it, who we're saying it to, and do we have the respect of that person that they're going to be listening to us with with that intent.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started looking at the characters and their mood and where they're at in their place and where they're supposed to be, it was easy to give them that voice. um Even somebody who's higher up, when he loses the respect of the people around him, they're looking at him like he's a crazy person, and it doesn't matter what he says, he's a commoner to them.
Mm-hmm.
And he's thinking, I'm royalty, wait, hold on, like why are you talking to me like that? But if you lose the crown, then you're just another person.
I like it. I like so. So people's perspectives of each other is also an important note in the book. It seems like the idea of how we view each other and how we communicate with each other is, and that's a difficult concept. That can be a bit difficult to write. You know, in in so much as you're carrying a lot of weight
Yeah.
in this book. It looks like there's a lot of different things that you're doing, a lot of different concepts that you're really trying to work with,
Yeah.
and I find that very very interesting. Now about your setting and your because you have a game, two games, a book. Do you have a design bible
For the book.
for everything? You know, because when you're dealing with a overreaching world that crosses mediums, you know, a design bible is usually what people make that has the world, a synopsis of the characters, kind of. This is without telling the story. These are the components of the world. These are the components of the story, as kind of a reminder, or when you work with in a team, that everyone's working kind of out of the same folder.
Right. When it comes to the games or working with a team, I definitely do have uh that design document.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the actual lore of the book, I don't have anything written down per se, but I know it so well. You know, if somebody asks me about a specific character, I have that specific character down to a T. I know their
Yeah.
birthday, I know their zodiac sign, like I know their favorite color. You can ask me any of the 100 characters that I have already fleshed out. I know everything about them. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what's interesting is because I know exactly where they live. I know how they live. I know how cluttered they are or if they're neat. And it's just, I know it sounds like I have 100 personalities. It's not, I promise. But the world that I've built is so intricately woven inside my mind. If I was to try to flesh that out, it would create a series of books. And that's what
Yeah.
I've been trying to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's the hope, isn't it? That there's enough in going on, and I think that truly great second books come from the idea that there is more story to
Yeah.
tell. That there is not that it should feel like it came up organically as opposed to forced, as there is more to tell here. There is more to be explored.
Can I give you a
Um,
sneak peek?
yeah,
I'm going to give you a sneak peek because you've read the very first chapter
I
of the
have.
first book, right?
Yes, I
And it
have.
says, "Let it be known that all beings, living or dead, governed by this declaration." That was the very
Yes.
first chapter 0.1, right?
Yes.
You're exactly right when you say that it has to have like this story, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so the second
Yeah.
book starts off in a similar fashion.
Okay.
It starts off
Cool.
with injusticia absoluta. I forget the exact pronunciation, but it's absolute justice can never be neutral. And
Oh.
it starts off with an imamishitia. I know it would be wiser to say less, to keep my head down and move on. I understand it's not a personal vendetta, but the unintentional torts leave me tangled in my own anxious thoughts. In simpler terms, I've been through this before, so why should I expect anything different now? But that's who I am. I always cling to the hope that some idealistic beacon of ethical grace will emerge, setting an example of justice and serenity. I suppose that's why I wrote to you in the first place. Hashem. That
Cool.
sets the stage for the second book, and I'm not going to
Okay.
give anything else, but that's your sneak
Yeah.
peek for the second novel. And I hope that that also entices you to go back to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
first
It makes me
novel
want to read the
and
next
go, wait,
sentence.
what the heck did I just miss?
Right? Yeah. That's a good setup. I gotta admit, that's a good setup. That is a very good setup.
And the whole
So
point is to put it all together, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have a favorite character?
Yes.
Nice. It's thank you. It's like I love all of my children equally, but this one's my favorite.
My favorite character you haven't read yet.
Yeah. Okay.
He comes out in the second book. He is the protagonist of the second novel, and he's different because he is literally who I hoped I would be,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, or at least my personality. But as you can tell, my book's a tragedy. um,
Yes.
he goes through a tragic moment, and this is the second book is going to tell you. The first book already tells you about me and about what
Mm-hmm.
my thoughts and anxieties are, but the second book tells you what I've been through. Um,
Okay.
and that's going to it's going to be hard for me to write, but I'm ready to write it. I have everything down to a T. The outline of the book is already done. It's about 50 pages, and all I'm doing is fleshing it out now.
So, did you find a character that was particularly hard to write?
Hardest one was Juliet for sure.
Okay. Why
Uh,
Juliet?
because she's a woman that I've never um, got a chance to know. So how do I
Okay.
write about somebody that I've never met? Um,
Fair.
and the reason why her name is Juliet is because, oh man, this is a little bit deep right here, but I'm gonna say something I haven't told anybody.
Do it.
Juliet, this is like the medieval fantasy time, so this is right after, like right before Renaissance, but right after Romeo and Juliet. But
Mm-hmm.
Romeo and Juliet has that fiction of who Juliet is, but I
Mm-hmm.
also knew a Juliet that never existed.
Oh.
Um, and when I was in college, I knew of this Juliet, and I created this character of her,
Mm-hmm.
and I never knew her. Not the
Oh,
way
wow.
that I should have known her. This
Okay.
was just, it's really hard to say, but this was definitely someone who almost existed, but didn't.
Oh,
And
okay.
so writing Juliet's character was really difficult for me because how do I create someone who's never existed? How
Yeah.
do I create somebody who I thought was this person and it wasn't?
Okay. That's really interesting. The it's kind of the nature of it that we bring things that aren't alive to life. I guess is one of the things that you want to try to do with any with any particular work that you're doing is you're effectively bringing something that doesn't exist into existence. You
Yeah.
are, and I guess the best thing you can do is make it feel as alive as you can,
Yeah.
because these characters, these concepts, they didn't exist before you showed up. And do you feel that you have an obligation to do said character justice?
Of course. It was funny that you say that because a lot of my characters stimulate off of the emotions or the ideas of something. Juliet being an idea off of the Romeo and Juliet kind of spew. I guess that's the inspiration for that character. But the
Mm-hmm.
Overseer is another one because the Overseer doesn't show you his name, and it's the mystery behind this head of the organization. But the head of the organization is not necessarily the government or anything like that. It's the
Yeah.
head of you that controls you without you really having a name for it. I don't know where I get this drive from, but I have to be better than I could ever be for myself, you know?
The there's a I love, because I wrote and am editing a short story, The Shade of the Evening, and it's one of the things that I'm doing there is something that H.G. Wells does, in that
Mm.
characters don't have names. Um,
Yes.
and H.G. Wells is the time machine. They are only referred to by what they do.
Okay.
There's the artist. There's they literally just refer to the time traveler as the traveler. Um, and I find that I love that naming convention of the idea of your defining trait. It doesn't matter what your name is. You are this thing. You
Yeah.
are you're the artist. You're the whoever majig. It's I find that to be an interesting way to go about as far as naming conventions go, because it establishes the important concept that you need to know about said character, right? What you
Yeah.
need to know about said character is they are the overseer. What you need to know about said character is that they are an artist. And there's there is something that I enjoy about that. There was a 2chan web novel that eventually went on to become a manga and an anime for a bit, called Hero Be Mine, Hero I Refuse. And it's basically about the hero, effectively patterned after the hero from Dragon Warrior, meeting the demon lord, finding out the demon lord is a woman, and rather than fighting her, the demon lord puts forth a very compelling argument as to why they should work together for the betterment of both monsters and people. And he's like, all right, that's cool, I'm on board. But there, everyone is referred to again by what they do. There's hero, there's demon lord, there's female knight, and it's rather than disassociating from those characters because they don't have names, you learn from what they are titled, what their core motivation and what their purpose was,
Yeah.
um, in what their purpose is in the world.
Yeah, that
And
makes sense. I like that.
it's fun. It's a fun little read. So did you? Each character has purpose. A character that's going to be a POV or a pivotal character has to have purpose,
Right.
right? Otherwise, there's no point to reading them. There's no purpose, no read. So, Did you find it easy or hard? Because there are a lot of the way it's reading out, right? The way you're describing it
Mhm.
is that purpose is a big. Uh, it seems to be a big thing in
Yeah.
this a book as well. Did you find difficulty finding or applying purpose to your characters?
Um, no, because that was the
Excellent.
whole objective. The whole objective was what is their purpose? Like, why
Mm-hmm.
are they here?
Yeah.
Every character that actually has a name, besides the overseer, of course, has a
Yeah.
purpose. The What you're trying to find out is what is their purpose and what is going to happen as they're meeting these people who kind of block them from that purpose.
Yes.
um, you see in one of the meetings that they have is that they all have their own different agendas, and they're listening to the overseer give his point of view,
Mm-hmm.
and they have their own doubts. They're like, but what about this?
Mm-hmm.
But what about that?
Yeah.
And you see the overseer react, and you see the conundrum of when you have people who have different perspectives
Mm-hmm.
and all their purposes kind of collide with each other.
Yeah.
One of two things can happen. Either one person gives and kind of like submits under that dominion of the person,
Yes.
or they challenge. And when they challenge, you butt heads.
Mm-hmm.
But how severe you butt heads, it's almost like a game of chicken. It's like,
Yeah.
are you going to go to the left or to the right, or am I going to go to the left or the right? And if not, then we're going to escalate.
Yes.
Um, and that's what we see in the book. That's where we get the chaos from.
That's really that's very well thought out. That's very well thought out.
And you see it all the time in the book. It's not just one chapter, it's another chapter and another one.
Mm-hmm.
And you might see small ones, and you might see people kind of like, oh, let me humble myself. I got to remember who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
But then you see kings bow down in this
Oh,
book and say,
very cool.
I'm not going to start this because it is not the right time to do this.
Yeah. That is very cool. Well, we have reached our time. I actually realized I have something scheduled after this. But so I would like to thank you so much for being here and giving us a more in-depth look into, because last time we covered the writing process, right?
Mm-hmm.
What it means to create. And here we learned what the microcosm of that creation entails. And that's very cool. So, pinned in the description is Joltierre's book. I have a copy. I've been reading it. I have enjoyed what I read so far. I'll tell you that, Jolt. I've enjoyed what I've read so far.
That means a lot.
Yeah, yeah. No, and we didn't get to the music, but interestingly enough, Joltierre has knows apparently a lot of musical people and is creating a soundscape for the book as well. How will you be releasing that?
So right now, if you get the paperback or the hardcover, you have QR codes that kind of link to music, so you can kind of get a feel of the chapter you're about to get into. All of that stuff goes to either Spotify or Amazon, depending on which one you have, because I have two QR codes in each chapter.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also going to be incorporated with the games as well. Now, the music that's also in there is kind of to promote their music, because I do have a lot of people that I know. So there's going to be stuff from rock, stuff from hip hop, so on and so forth. But as we start developing the game more and more, and people start supporting those authors, so those artists, we're able to do more with those people. I would say we have about 100 voice actors and about 200 musicians, all supporting this novel, by allowing me to use their music or use their voice in certain things. We also have a lot of celebrities, or mini celebrities, I guess you can say. We have a few celebrities that are willing to help out. But it just depends on the receptiveness. So by all means, if you support the novel, if you want to see this grow, show your support by leaving your review on Amazon, or however you want to look at it. But the more support, the better, the bigger it's going to grow and the faster. And then you can say to your friends, I was a part of this when it was on the ground floor. So by all
That's
means,
very cool, Joel. That's very cool. And it has been really interesting, um, in my own small part, seeing how this has sort of evolved from, one, this one chapter you gave me to this whole ass novel. Um,
and then next time it's going to be a game.
and next time it's going to be a game. And when that happens, I would love to have you on here and talk about that as well. Um, because there's something to be said about learning each part of, of a concept of a world. Um, you know, you want you ever want a quality RPG made? Hit me up. Um,
I'm totally down. I've always wanted a card game based off of this too.
yeah,
So
I
we'll
can make
see exactly
I can
what
make card games.
the future provides.
Yeah. Okay. So this was Joltïerre, author, designer, just just a man with so many hats to be worn. But I'm gonna send you off to my buddy Spectre. He was also on the show, so that has been. So yeah, I've had two really good guests in a row. I'm actually very very lucky. But here's our raid message. I don't know. Spectre is a bottom.
Spectre's the bottom.
That's our raid message. Spec is a bottom. So, again, link in the top, for our boy Joltïerre, a very good author, actually, as far as I just hit copy for my raid message. This is an awkward raid out. All right, so Jolt, I already have a raid in process. Where? God damn it. Okay, so Jolt, any last words?
Stay awesome, opossum.
I like it. All right, so I've been Damien. I've been your dynamically augmented media independence hardest working game designer and AI on Twitch. And I will see you guys Wednesday for Valheim.